My friends, there comes a time in every life when a man or a woman must look deeply into the mirror of the soul and ask, am I living beneath my true potential, or am I rising to the life I was destined to claim? Too many people walk through this world with low standards for their thoughts, their relationships, their work, and their dreams. They accept crumbs when the feast of life is waiting for them. They convince themselves that mediocrity is safety, that small living is comfort, and that lowering expectations will protect them from disappointment. But the truth is clear. The quality of your life will always be measured by the standards you set for yourself. If you wish to attract a better life, if you desire riches in spirit, health, relationships, and prosperity, then you must first decide to raise your standards. You cannot expect abundance when you are tolerating lack. You cannot expect respect when you are willing to accept disrespect. You cannot expect success when you are comfortable with excuses. Life will always give back to you in proportion to what you demand of yourself and what you allow from others. Consider for a moment the nature of a magnet. A magnet does not chase metal. It does not beg or plead. It simply possesses a force that attracts. You are no different. The life you desire does not require you to beg, but it requires you to become magnetic by lifting your own standards of thought, belief, and behavior. The higher you raise your standards, the stronger your magnetic force becomes, and the more the world bends itself to match the frequency you carry. Think of the man who desires wealth, but tolerates waste in his daily habits. He says he wants riches, yet he spends without discipline, works without focus, and surrounds himself with companions who drain rather than build. His words say one thing, but his standards say another. And life always responds to standards, not wishes. Now picture the man who desires wealth and sets standards of order, discipline, and excellence. He holds himself accountable, seeks knowledge, invests in his growth, and refuses to remain in company that poisons his vision. The universe cannot help but yield its treasures to such a man. So it is with love. A woman who accepts betrayal, disrespect, and neglect will always find more of it in her path, because her standard silently signals that she is willing to endure it. But a woman who demands honesty, loyalty, and honor, not with words alone but with her actions, will attract those who must rise to meet her. People do not give you what you deserve. They give you what you demand through the standards you enforce. Now let us examine the power of thought. The most successful men and women throughout history have all guarded their minds as a fortress. They refused to entertain small ideas. They refused to bow before doubt. They set a standard that only great, noble, and purposeful thoughts would dwell in their minds, and by doing so they shaped a destiny that could not be denied. You must decide this very hour, will you continue to tolerate low thoughts, or will you elevate your mental standards? If you constantly feed on gossip, negativity, and fear, then your life will mirror those very things. But if you set a standard that only faith, vision, and courage may dwell in your mind, then you will attract a future that matches that level of greatness. There is a law of correspondence that cannot be broken. As within, so without. Your external world is nothing more than a reflection of the standards you maintain internally. Raise your standards on the inside, and the outside must follow. Lower your standards, and life will degrade accordingly. Raising your standards is not a single decision, but a daily discipline. It is choosing, moment after moment, to reject what is beneath you, and to accept only what aligns with the highest version of yourself. When you rise in the morning, ask yourself, what do my standards demand of me today? Do they demand excellence in my work, integrity in my actions, gratitude in my heart? If so, then live by them, for in living by them you are shaping your tomorrow. You may say, but it is difficult to change. I have lived by low standards for so long. And I say to you, difficulty is the very proof that you are on the right path. Nothing worth achieving comes without effort. The muscles of the body grow only by resistance, and the muscles of the spirit grow only by struggle. Every time you resist the temptation to lower your standards, you strengthen your power. Every time you insist upon excellence, even in the smallest task, you build a foundation that cannot be shaken. Perhaps you wonder why others seem to have opportunities that pass you by. Perhaps you envy those who live in wealth, health, or joy. But the truth is not that life favors them unfairly. It is that they raised their standards long before the opportunity arrived. The rich man set standards of discipline with his money before wealth came to him. The strong man set standards of health before his body reflected strength. The joyful man set standards of gratitude before life showered him with blessings. Do not be deceived. Opportunity is not the beginning. It is the reward for those who have prepared through standards. You cannot wait for a better life to raise your standards. You must raise your standards to create a better life. The man who waits for wealth before becoming disciplined will never see it. The woman who waits for respect before setting boundaries will never receive it. The student who waits for success before studying diligently will never taste it. Action must precede reward, and high standards must precede abundance. Now, let us confront one of the greatest enemies of high standards, the influence of weak company. The standards of those around you will always rub off upon you, whether you wish it or not. If you walk with those who complain, you will complain. If you walk with those who settle for less, you will settle. If you walk with those who waste time, you will waste time. But if you walk with those who demand more of themselves, you will begin to demand more of yourself. If you walk with those who hold themselves to excellence, you will feel compelled to rise. Choose your company wisely, for their standards will either raise you or destroy you. Another enemy of high standards is the voice of excuse. Excuses are the tools of the man who fears change. They are the lies we tell ourselves to stay comfortable in the familiar. But every excuse you cling to lowers your standards a little more. I am too tired lowers your standard of discipline. I cannot afford to try lowers your standard of faith. I am too old, too young, too busy lowers your standard of possibility. Destroy excuses, and you will find your standards rising like the sun at dawn. Let us remember that raising standards does not mean arrogance or pride. It means responsibility. It means recognizing that you are the architect of your life, and that the blueprint you draw will determine the building you live in. If you design with low standards, you will live in a shack of regret. If you design with high standards, you will live in a palace of fulfillment. The choice belongs to you and you alone. Do not mistake comfort for success. Many men live comfortably, but not powerfully. They have lowered their standards until nothing is required of them, and life gives them nothing in return. True success is not measured by how easy life becomes, but by how noble, rich, and abundant it becomes. And that nobility, that richness, that abundance is always the result of refusing to settle for less than your best. When you raise your standards, something remarkable happens. Life begins to test you. You declare, "I will no longer accept mediocrity," and immediately you are confronted with situations that tempt you to settle. You declare, "I will only entertain positive thoughts," and immediately doubts rush in. You declare, "I will hold myself to excellence," and immediately obstacles appear. Do not be discouraged by these tests. They are not signs of failure. They are confirmations that your declaration has been heard, and now life must refine you to match it. Each test is the fire that purifies the gold of your standard. The better life you desire is already waiting for you. It is not hiding. It is not denied. It is hovering just beyond the level of your current standards. If you lift your standards, you lift your life. If you demand more of yourself, the world will demand more for you. If you choose to walk as one who is worthy of abundance, abundance will come rushing to meet you. And so I urge you, examine every area of your life, ask yourself where you have accepted less than you deserve, ask where you have tolerated mediocrity, ask where you have excused weakness, then declare with firmness, no more. From this day forward I raise my standards, from this day forward I refuse to settle. From this day forward I will live only in alignment with the highest vision of myself. And when you do this, when you raise your standards consistently, courageously, and unapologetically, you will find that the better life does not need to be chased. It will be drawn to you as surely as the river flows to the sea. For life always gives to the man or woman who dares to demand more of themselves than others ever thought possible. Raise your standards, and you will raise your life. My friends, I tell you this truth. The decision to raise your standards is not a one-time declaration, but a lifelong covenant with yourself. It is the difference between drifting with the current of chance and steering your own ship toward the harbor of destiny. Many people cry out for change, yet few are willing to pay the price of discipline. They want success, but remain married to their comfort zones. They want transformation, but refuse to part ways with the habits that chain them. To raise your standards means to declare war on the lesser version of yourself, and to never again allow that version to command your future. Consider the farmer who sows his field. If he scatters poor seeds, no matter how rich the soil, no matter how abundant the rain, his harvest will reflect the low standard of the seed he chose. But if he selects only the finest seed, cares for it diligently, and weeds out what threatens it, his harvest will reflect his higher standard. Life is much the same. Every action you take, every thought you entertain, every relationship you nurture is a seed. If your standards for these seeds are low, your harvest will be small. But if your standards are high, your harvest will be plentiful. Raising your standards means refusing to live by the expectations of the crowd. The crowd will always invite you to average living because it comforts them to see you remain on their level. They will call your vision unrealistic, your determination unnecessary, your discipline excessive. But remember this: the world does not reward the common, it rewards the uncommon. History is not written by those who lived as the crowd lived, but by those who demanded more of themselves than others thought reasonable. You cannot raise your standards only in one area and neglect the rest. A man may demand excellence in his work, but tolerate chaos in his health, and eventually his neglected health will erode his success. A woman may hold high standards in her relationships, but allow poverty in her financial habits, and eventually lack will steal her peace. To attract a better life, you must raise your standards in every area: your body, your mind, your spirit, your finances, your relationships. One weak link can break the chain, and one neglected standard can unravel the fabric of a great life. But do not mistake raising your standards for chasing perfection. Perfection is a prison, excellence is freedom. You raise your standards not to become flawless, but to demand constant growth. Growth is the true measure of a life well lived. A tree does not grow in a day, but each day it stretches higher. So must you stretch, each day lifting yourself beyond yesterday's limit. Progress, not perfection, is the fruit of high standards, and as you raise your standards, understand this: the world may resist you at first, but in time it will respect you. At first, you may lose friends who cannot bear your new expectations. At first, you may feel lonely walking the path of higher ground, but soon you will find companions who share your vision, opportunities that match your growth, and blessings that align with your dignity. For when you elevate yourself, the universe reorders itself to meet you where you stand. So I say again, refuse to accept less than your highest calling, refuse to bow before excuses weakness, or fear. Refuse to let yesterday's limits define tomorrow's possibilities. Set your standards high, live by them relentlessly, and watch as life, in its unshakable law, rises to meet you with abundance, joy, and greatness beyond measure. There is a voice inside every man and woman that whispers of greatness, a quiet reminder that you were not born for mediocrity, but for mastery. Yet that voice is often drowned by the noise of compromise, by the excuses you permit, by the low standards you allow to govern your days. To live an elevated life, you must train yourself to listen to that inner voice with greater attention than you listen to the opinions of the world. That voice is the compass, pointing always to the highest version of yourself. If you choose to ignore it, you drift. If you choose to obey it, you rise. Raising your standards is not a matter of chance, but of choice, and choice, repeated daily, becomes destiny. The man who chooses each morning to rise earlier than comfort dictates, to work harder than the crowd expects, to dream bigger than fear allows, becomes the man who shapes his own fortune. The woman who chooses to speak words of faith rather than despair, to discipline her habits rather than indulge them, to hold herself to dignity when others would lower themselves to pettiness, becomes the woman who commands respect and attracts blessing. These are not accidents of fate. These are results of standards. Do not be deceived into believing that raising your standards is a sacrifice that strips you of joy. It is, in fact, the gateway to greater joy. For what joy is there in a life of regret? What happiness is there in wasted years? What peace is there in knowing you settled for less than you were capable of becoming? True joy, true peace, true fulfillment come when you can stand before yourself and say with certainty, "I demanded the best of me, and I gave it." Every sacrifice of comfort you make now will return to you multiplied in the form of a better life tomorrow. You must also realize that raising your standards creates a ripple effect. When one person demands more of themselves, others take notice. A father who raises his standards inspires his children to reach higher. A leader who raises his standards elevates his entire team. A friend who refuses to settle becomes a mirror that shows others what is possible. Your life becomes an example, a living testimony that excellence is contagious. By raising your standards, you are not only changing your own destiny, you are altering the destiny of those who look to you for guidance. There is a cost to low standards, and it is far greater than the effort of raising them. The cost is lost time, wasted potential, missed opportunities, and a life of quiet frustration. You pay for low standards every day you allow them to govern you. You pay in diminished confidence, in broken relationships, in unfulfilled dreams. But the reward of high standards is equally certain: strength, growth, prosperity, and the satisfaction of knowing you lived as you were meant to live. One path leads to regret, the other to greatness. The choice is always yours, so today let it be clear, raising your standards is the greatest investment you will ever make. It requires no permission, no approval, no wealth to begin. It requires only the courage to decide that you will no longer tolerate the lesser version of yourself. When that decision is made, and when it is honored daily, the better life you seek cannot help but be drawn to you. For life itself bends to the will of those who demand excellence. The standard you set is the contract you write with life. Every day, you sign that contract with your choices, your habits, and your responses to challenge. If you sign the contract of low standards, life delivers struggle without growth, work without reward, relationships without depth. If you sign the contract of high standards, life delivers opportunity, prosperity, respect, and inner strength. The agreement is not written in words but in action, and the world always honors the action you live by. Think about the way water flows. It will always seek the lowest level available to it. Human beings, too, if left unguarded, sink to the level of their lowest standards, but the moment you build walls of discipline, the The moment you elevate the channels of your life, that water must rise. Energy follows direction, and your energy will always flow toward the level you establish. Set your standards high enough, and you create a current that lifts everything in your life upward. There is no man or woman alive who has achieved greatness without first refusing what was beneath them. The inventor who pushes past failure refuses the standard of giving up. The leader who inspires thousands refuses the standard of small thinking. The athlete who breaks records refuses the standard of average training. Each of them stood at the same crossroads you face today. Accept what is comfortable or demand what is possible. Their choice was not made once, but every day, until excellence became their only way of living. You cannot raise your standards with half a heart. A divided will is no will at all. To truly raise your standards, you must decide with finality that there is no return to the old way of life. Burn the bridges to mediocrity. Cut the ties to excuses. Remove every back door that leads to your former self. When the mind knows there is no retreat, it will find the strength to advance. There will be moments when you falter, moments when the old habits whisper your name. Do not mistake a stumble for failure. High standards are not destroyed by one slip. They are maintained by the resolve to rise after every fall. The man of low standards excuses his fall and remains on the ground. The man of high standards acknowledges it, learns from it, and stands taller because of it. Progress is not the absence of failure, but the refusal to surrender to it. And understand this: raising your standards is not only about what you demand from yourself, but also what you allow from others. If you tolerate disrespect, it becomes your portion. If you allow dishonesty, it becomes your atmosphere. But when you draw the line with clarity and strength, you force the world to rise to meet you. Boundaries are simply standards expressed outwardly. They protect your dignity, your energy, and your future. So let it be settled within you: to attract a better life, you must first become a better guardian of your own standards. Build them with courage, protect them with consistency, and honor them with discipline. For when you live with high standards, you do not need to chase success. Success will find you. My friends, the message is simple yet life-changing. The quality of your future will always rise or fall to the level of the standards you keep today. You cannot live small and expect greatness to appear. You cannot tolerate mediocrity and hope for excellence. The better life you seek is not hidden from you. It is waiting above the line of compromise, calling you to step higher. Decide now that you will no longer accept what drags you down. Decide that you will demand more of yourself in thought, in action, in faith, and in discipline. Guard your standards as your greatest treasure, for they will shape your destiny more than chance, more than luck, more than circumstance. And when you raise them consistently, with courage and conviction, you will discover that life itself rises to meet you, offering opportunities, blessings, and abundance beyond anything you once believed possible. Raise your standards, and you will raise your life.